Michael Boyle's StrengthCoach.com presents the Strength Coach Podcast, brought to you by Perform Better, the experts in functional training and rehabilitation. PerformBetter.com.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 193 of the Strength Coach Podcast, the official podcast of Michael Boyle's StrengthCoach.com, the world's best source for strength and conditioning information. You can try StrengthCoach.com out for 3 days, just $1. And if you have a staff of 2 or more and you want to sign up as a group, we have a special membership offer for you, up to 50% off, depending on how many people you got. Check it out at StrengthCoach.com. All right, I'm your host, Anthony Arana, and the show notes are located at StrengthCoachPodcast.com. Want to get in touch with me, shoot me an email to StrengthCoachPodcast@gmail.com. All right, today on the Coach's Corner, I spoke to Coach Boyle about a forum thread called High Hamstring Tendinopathy that got a lot of action. It's a great thread on the site if you haven't checked it out. We talked a bit about that. Also about his article, Converting the Front Squat to Rear Foot Elevated Split Squat. That and much more coming up on the Coach's Corner in a little while. Aaron McGurr from Perform Better joins us to talk about the huge summer sale, which ends really soon at the end of the month, and some of the upcoming education at the Perform Better Functional Training Institute. Gray Cook and Charlie Weingroff included. For the Results Fitness University Business of Fitness segment, Rachel Cosgrove is on to talk about building your team. Alistair McCall continues his series on the 7 keys to being a great coach in part 5. He talks about your interpersonal skills. Further hit the gym with the strength coach, I have on Todd Wright, who's the assistant coach as well as the head strength and conditioning coach with the Philadelphia 76ers. Spoke to Todd about his role with the Sixers. It's kind of a unique role. Vertical core, locomotion, the truth of human movement, 3D work on the floor and what brought him there, developing relationships with athletes, and so much more. Coming up from Coach Wright in a little while. Lots of things to get to, so let's get on the phone with Coach Boyle. Now it's time for the Coach's Corner with Coach Boyle. Coach, how you doing?
I am doing. I'll go with magical, Anthony, actually, because I'm in Disney.
Oh,
I just made Cindy laugh.
I like it. I like it, a little magical. Very good. Very appropriate. Nice. Coach, we talked about this high hamstring syndrome tendinopathy, but we really didn't talk about it. We just talked about, wow, the video was so good and whatever. But we actually had a woman come in the other day feeling that, and I took FRC over the weekend, and like things just kind of, watching that video again, because I was showing the kid that rents from me, Ed, showing him, because it's his client, I showed him that video, and we were talking about, doing some isometrics first, because he had done some squats with her. She just said he just thought it was tight, and then I was just kind of listening, and he did some squats with her, and after the first set, she felt good, but then she started feeling tight again in there, and I was like, yeah, see, that's what it is. Maybe in the beginning it feels good, you're stretching it out, but then over time it's like with the visualization of that hand underneath the cable where, you don't want it there because there's all that compression. Can you explain a little bit of what the video was talking about that compression for everybody that hasn't seen it? And then I want to talk about some things maybe that you would do after that, but what exactly, can you just explain what's causing this high hamstring?
Well, I think if you can envision, I think what they did is they gave you this visual of the muscles being wrapped around a pulley. And I think that to me was the most telling of the visual, was this idea, as the muscle is wrapping around the pulley, and then like you were saying, if something was stuck underneath it, but even just the physical pressure of this, object moving around the pulley, as opposed to, I think we always think of everything as very much kind of straight up and down, more like a puppet, I think would be the simplistic view that we have, is where it's like, we pull the strings and arms go up and down and legs go up and down and everything's fine. But what you realize, it's really not. It's more like a puppet with pulleys. So where when you pull, the wheel turns, and then the tendon or the muscle is forced to wrap around the wheel. And I think that's what you start thinking about in squatting, that high hamstring idea. You've got your like ischial tuberosity down there, where this thing can get not only stretched but wrapped. And maybe if there is, say, a bursa or there's something in there, something can literally get squished down. And it just made you realize why some people have painful points in the range when you start to think about these bony attachments and the angular motions that have to be created in terms of in tendons. And just, I really think people have got to go back to the bad part. Maybe we should just post a video itself or a link to the video because it's a huge visual where when people look at it, you go, I have to think whether or not, I don't think I showed that in the staff meeting yet because I saw it in the summer. I got to make a note for myself to do that because I think it's the video itself is one of those real light bulb kind of moments where you go, okay, this makes a huge amount of sense. And that's even one of my kind of disputes when the guys are doing some of the FRC stuff is that I think people don't get that you're looking for pain-free range. So if you're dragging, say, if you're doing like the shoulder cars, but you're dragging your rotator cuff under the acromion and it hurts, that's not, gaining that range or finding that range is not necessarily good for you because, you as well as you can have impingement, you can have abrasion when you've got these bony spots that are in there. So you've just got to be careful that I always think like with all these things, that recognizing that they're tools, and the first rule with any of these tools is, does it hurt?
Yeah, but...
And doing stuff that hurts...
No, I was going to say, just to clarify, the CARS is really a self-assessment. The CARS are not a corrective. So in the CARS, you're going to start to find out through that range of motion that, oh man, there's some pain here. Where is it? You figure out where your end point is or where your sticking point is. And really that's where you start with the isometric. So that's why I think the FRC is perfect for what's happening with like this kind of a tendinopathy because now you know where you can go. You know your end range, and that's where it hurts. That's where you have to start, below where it hurts. So I think it combines exactly what you're saying. Does it hurt? Don't go past there. You can't go past there, and you're not going to just force it past. It's not a stretch. You have to strengthen it right before that point, slowly get there, strengthen it there, and that'll start to work it. Because that's why I wanted to ask you about what your correctives are, because in the video they do say start with isometric. So how do you, like, let's just talk about this, because I think a lot of people are going to have this. People are going to say, oh, okay, my hamstring is really tight. I feel it up by my butt. That's what we're talking about here. And a lot of people come in like that. So the problem is hip flexion or extension. Not hip extension. We shouldn't bother that because it's exactly behind. Yeah. So the hip flexion though is going to hurt. So I guess you can. But even Mike, technically even in an RDL, you are flexing your hip, so you're going to feel it in an RDL
exactly,
too.
Yeah.
So that's
why I think you initially have to start with bridging, and we might look at that and thinking that's for glute activation but the reality is it probably is as much as anything going into that basic sort of does it hurt kind of thing and finding a biomechanical pattern. So in effect, if you look at what you're doing there, it's almost like you're taking the tendon away from that pulley, away from the block, away from the barrier, and just allowing that muscle to contract. And then the other thing, and this is where I think you get these combination of ideas, I think the other thing when you look at the Sarman sort of stuff, because I think and sorry, I'm crossing myself up here, but you can kind of look and say, whose lens do I want to look through? I like the Sarman lens of when a muscle is injured or painful, look for a weak synergist. So automatically when I have someone who's saying that their hamstrings hurt, I'm going to be thinking weak anterior abdominals, weak anti-extension, weak hip extension, weak glutes. And so I'm probably, from a corrective standpoint, going to spend much more time thinking about pelvic balance and taking that tendon off stretch than I am actually dealing with the hamstring. And that's where, you go back to bridging. Can I get their glutes doing what they're supposed to be doing instead of their hamstrings doing what there's the same kind of people who probably are going to hamstring cramp in that situation because they're not being able to use their glutes. And those are maybe the same people that can't do a stability ball rollout or can't hold a plank. And so I think you've got to be thinking all the time, cause and effect, and often realizing that what you're seeing is a symptom and not going so actively after the symptom, but going really actively after the causative factors. So that would be my thought process there.
Would you do, in the video they said start with isometrics, would you do anything like that to start? Well, you said in the thread, actually, you did say, yeah, you should start with isometrics. So what exactly would you do for, so let's say a high hamstring tendinopathy, what would you do isometrically? Would you just kind of have them do some manual?
Isometric in terms of, you think about 5-second holds. Normally, if we're bridging, we're teaching 5-second holds. Mm-hmm. In that bridging, and in that one situation, we're getting that anterior core control that we want, and then we're getting that posterior, whatever, turn on, innovation, however you want to look at it. And we're also getting some anterior hip stretch. And then we're trying, I think, to reestablish or de-establish that synergistic dominance. I can't think of the word I want, but what you've got in that situation probably is a synergistic dominance situation where the hamstring is doing the work of the glute. So, and that's why I always talk about sometimes something really simple like bridging can end up being a really good and a really complicated solution when you sit there and say, well, here's why I'm doing this. And then you get into, are you doing it correctly? We would be doing it with an exhale so that we're getting that good anterior core contraction. We would be trying to look at pelvic position and make sure that we're not going into anterior tilt. And that's why, it's funny, someone asked me to write an article about why I don't like hip thrusts. And that would kind of go back into that idea. That's why I don't like the Brett Contreras, throw a big heavy bar across your hips and, throw your hips up in the air, because if you tend to be a lumbar extender, then that's going to be the strategy that you're going to use to get yourself in that position. So there's just a lot. I think with all this stuff it's always way simpler than we think it is and way more complicated all at the same time.
Yeah, no doubt. Because I know I was just kind of, the light bulb went off in my head just when that woman came in. And then I said, man, we probably not misdiagnosed, not that we're diagnosing, but we probably think, oh, yeah, get on the foam roll, a little too much in terms of that, when we should be, and not just trying to, get them in that range of motion. Because I saw what it did when she went down into that low squat. After a while, it started to hurt her. So that's when I pulled it out and said, we need to revisit this. So good stuff.
Right. And that's where I think sometimes, I always tell people and it's, again, it's a stupid kind of hyperbolic description, but I always tell somebody, on a scale of 1 to 10, I want a 0. You know what I mean? When you say, does it hurt? Do you feel that? I want to make sure, like 0, nothing. There's no, not a little, it gets worse every rep. I don't want any of that. I want 0. And if I don't get 0, I've got to really rethink whether or not I want to be going in that pattern.
Just a side note on that, would that really, isn't it a yes or no question? Isn't it really 0 or 10? Not 10 being the most,
Exactly. Okay. No, but that's why you always say, on a scale of 1 to 10,
mm-hmm.
I want a 0, because when you should be saying on a scale of 0 to 10, I want a 0. But I think that's what I mean. Sometimes we get stuck with these, colloquialisms, the way that we describe things. And you say, yeah, that's how I would describe that, as on a scale of 1 to 10. But I don't really want to 1.
Exactly. Coach, you wrote an article, you actually had in your blog, we put on the site, converting front squat to rear foot elevated squat. I just kind of really like this. That's why I wanted to talk about it, because I love the thought process, and I wanted to ask you about it. You had more and more coaches switching from the front or back squats going into rear foot elevated. Now, the question is how much weight to use. And you had said you found that the front squat and rear foot elevated squat are 1 RMs with a bar in the back squat position, were pretty close, plus or minus 10 pounds. And, but you did, I guess, for the front squats, you did the 1 RM, but for the split squats, you did a rep max and then calculated the 1 RM, and they were pretty close. They were still pretty close, because you don't like the back squat position in the rear foot elevated split squat, because it can get you into trouble. Now, you said you figure you can do 80% of what you can do with the bar with dumbbells. Where did you didn't just figure that? You just basically you did a lot of testing, right?
That.
You did, okay.
But what I did is I figured it based on, in reality I did research years ago. This is probably pre-97 when I was still working at BU. I actually had guys dumbbell bench, and again rep maxes with dumbbells to try to figure out that number. And it came out to 80%. It was, I had kids that just kept saying, okay, I knew what their 1RM bench was. And I was doing it at that time more from the standpoint of, I had some really strong guys who I felt didn't push themselves in some of the dumbbell exercises, so I wanted to know what weights to prescribe. But I started going to guys and taking different variations of it and saying, okay, go try this. I took 80%. So in a sense, I took 80% of 80%. Like I took 64% of your bench and divided it by 2. Go see if you can do that for 5. And guys would do it. And after doing it a bunch of times with a bunch of people, we came, and I wouldn't say it's not exact. There could be a little bit, but the variance would be actually fairly small for whatever reason. It comes out particularly, and it almost applies more to upper body stuff, but I just said, hey, why not apply the same kind of ratio? And when I did that, I mean, it was amazing that guys, still were in a very similar ballpark. I would not say identical, but I would say similar. And the big thing is it gives people some chance to, this was as I said, one of my former interns now coaching. It gives us a chance to give them some starting weights, because they can look and think, okay, I got a kid who, can front squat 300 pounds. All right, what should he be able to split squat? And when you just kind of break the numbers down for him, it actually, you'd find most people, if you did the math, would be able to do exactly what I said.
Okay, yeah. So if somebody could if 200 was their 1RM, 200 pounds, that means that their dumbbells, you would just do 0.8 times 200, which would come out to 160. So then that would mean it would be 80-pound dumbbells for the
Actually,
1 rep.
No, because it would be 80. It would be 80% for the 1 rep, exactly. So then when you went to, all you do is you double multiply. If you said I want to do 80%, then you do 80 times 80, so you'd use 64 divided by 2.
Okay.
And strangely, that as I started to do it, and I started to put those numbers into Excel, it did in fact work out, and I was able to get really consistent numbers. And then the good thing about that is now I can do it. So even for my athletes, I can predict things like what I want to do for dumbbell bench, what I want to do for dumbbell incline. When I'm in the process of creating my Excel sheets, I can put all this stuff in. We've even gone so far, and this is unrelated, but we'll develop a chin-up 1RM based on what their body weight is and what their external load is, and then we can still do that. So when we start filling out somebody's workout sheet, we can suddenly have dumbbell bench, dumbbell incline, chin-up 1RM, split squats. All that stuff can get predicted, and we can do that with just having a couple of numbers. So it's pretty good. It's pretty good. It's pretty convenient. It works.
Yeah, you can always adjust. I mean, obviously, it's not going to be...
Yeah, exactly. It just gives you starting points. But what we find is that it gives you starting points that actually push people beyond where they would probably go themselves. Yet they find we can do it. Like you've seen, I've posted some videos of our girls doing dumbbell exercises, and I got girls that are dumbbell benching 60s and dumbbell incline in 50s, because we just do the math based on what they can bench, and all of a sudden we say, hey, you should be able to do this, and surprisingly they can. And they almost look surprised now, but they don't even think about it. People walk in all the time and look and think, the girls are getting ready to do inclines, and they look over and they see one of the girls walk over and grab the 50s and go and walk over the incline bench, and somebody looks like, she's not going to be able to do that. And then they bang out, 6, 8, 10 reps with the 50s. And it's like, nope, they can do that.
Yeah. Nice. All right. Well, I'm not going to talk about it now because we don't have time, but I will I'm going to tell everybody, go on Twitter. We posted on strengthcoach.com. There was a great conversation between, yourself and Jamie Rodriguez, Devin McConnell, Corey Kennedy, Colin Shields. Great. Is everything started from you posting your one of your videos with the girls doing single leg hang cleans, which we posted as a video of the week. So I'll tell everybody, check that out on Coach Boyle's Twitter. So Coach, thanks so much for coming on today, and we'll talk to you next time.
All right, thanks, Dan. I appreciate it.
All right, now it's time for the Ask the Equipment Experts with Perform Better. I'm here with the lovely and talented Erin McGurr. Erin, thanks for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, before we get into, we're going to continue our little discussion on the Perform Better Functional Training Institute. A couple more things that we didn't go into detail last time, but summer sale is still going. I think today is actually, we're recording this on is today the last day of summer officially?
That's a great question. I couldn't even tell you what date it is.
Today's the 21st.
I've been all over the place, so I'm a disaster.
But summer sale, when does that end?
The summer sale actually ends on September 30th, which is the end of next week. So there is the clock's ticking on all your last-minute items. But again, just to kind of cover it up, there are some things that are still on sale at great prices, and again, they're the best prices that we offer throughout the year. So some of the big ticket items, such as the Assault Air Bike, the Victory Rack, our PB Extreme Half Rack and Bench, sleds, group sets, things like that, we do have those on sale. We also have some other items that we normally don't put on sale, such as the TRX suspension trainer. I know that's always a good price. And then we have our typical items that are some of our best sellers, such as ropes, kettlebells, all of our bands, balance pads, things like that. So now's the time to stock up. Again, I can't believe that summer is ending, but it is almost time for the sale to end.
All right. And as we kind of transition into the fall, it really... We used to just be prepared for, there used to be a big break in the Perform Better education, and there would be, the first one day in December in Jersey. But now you got the Perform Better Functional Training Institute. We talked last time about the two closer ones that are coming up, which are, go ahead, Erin, that's your cue.
Well, we did actually just finish up with Emily Splickle's seminar last weekend, and that was a great turnout. She did a great job with that. We do have Jason Glass coming in all the way from Vancouver, so he's going to be doing more of his rotational slings and rotational power seminar, and that's going to be on Saturday, October 8th, so there's still some time for that one. And then after he's done, I know I didn't talk about these too much, I just mentioned them briefly, but we have Charlie Weingroff coming in. He's going to be doing a 3-day talk, so his is November 18th, 19th, and 20th. I know he's going to be filming it here. He's going to be touching on his new training equals rehab message. Going to be a lot of updated information, so he'll still cover his lateralization and regressions that he talked about before. I know he is going to touch on the training equals rehab model and the science behind it, but he's going to kind of go from there, go into things such as programming, intervals, motor skills, so that'll be pretty cool to see. And again, that is in November. And then in December, we do have Greg Cook coming up here for 2 days. It's going to be Friday, December 9th, and Saturday, December 10th. He's going to be going over his new functional capacity screen. I know everyone's familiar, a lot of people are familiar with the functional movement screen, so this is kind of the next step. They are doing their motor control screen box, or their new slide box is going to get involved in that. But he is going to be covering the functional capacity screen for the 2 days. He's going to be going over different testing, some case studies, really going over some of the correction stuff. But he does cover real-life examples, which is pretty cool. I know Lee did something similar a couple months back, and it was just really, really in-depth and a lot of good information. So, again, he is going to still touch on the functional movement screen, but it's going to be more of the SFMA, which is more of a clinical version of it. He's going to do the Y balance, and again, his new functional capacity screen using the motor control slide box. So it'll be interesting. It'll be a lot of new information coming out from Gray. And again, there's still early birds for both of those for Charlie's and Gray's, so I would definitely take a look at that and let us know if you have any more information or any questions.
All right, very cool. You're the one with the information. We're the one with the questions.
True.
But very cool. Yeah, that should be interesting. I know I saw some of the pre-con that Gray and Greg Rose did. So obviously they've had time to kind of work with it a little bit. So that should be interesting. I got to think about going to that. And I know you got the one days. We're going to start to hit on that soon because I'm sure the one day starting December 3rd. If you're going to be in Rhode Island on the 10th. Got to be in Jersey on the 3rd. You must be starting the one days then. So, but we'll talk about that next time. So, thanks so much for coming on today.
Thanks for having me.
Hi, everybody. It's Rachel Cosgrove with the Business of Fitness segment with Results Fitness University. Let's talk about building your team. Over and over again, we have mastermind coaching members who are part of our group. And, as they start to build their team, they reach a point where, they have a good team, everything's going great, they think everything's wonderful, they think, I've already done my hiring, I have my team in place, and they get a little relaxed, and they think, smooth sailing from here on out. And then one of their team members quits, or puts in their notice, or they have to end up, worst case, firing somebody, and we usually at that point get an emergency call from our mastermind coaching member because all of our coaching members get our cell phone number and they can call us emergency. And so we get an emergency call. Oh my gosh, so-and-so is, just quit, or I just had to fire somebody and now I need somebody. And what am I going to do? All right, here's the biggest lesson I want everyone to get across to avoid that situation, to avoid getting into that emergency situation. As the owner of a fitness business, as you're building your team, one of your number one vital functions is to always, always, always be looking for awesome people to be adding to your team. You're always looking for superstars. You always have your radar up. You're constantly trying to find new people. And I know what you're thinking, but what if I don't need new people? What if I have a good team right now? I don't care. You still should be looking for good people. You should always be looking for good people because you never know. And the universe has a funny way of working itself out that usually when you do find somebody who's perfect for your business, that person usually you end up needing at just the right moment. So as the owner of a fitness business, if you didn't already hear what I said, one of your number one vital functions is to constantly, always, always, always be looking for good people to add to your team. Not just good people, great people. That's where you're going to really, I know a lot of people meet our team at Results Fitness and they say, gosh, how did you build such a great team? And it's been over the years, we've had different people work for us and we've definitely taken, made some mistakes and we've, over the years realized who we want and what we want. And, we, at this point, we hire through our core values. So we really make sure people have our core values and really are a good fit with the team. But one of our biggest secrets is that we're always looking. Even when we're not hiring, if I meet somebody who's going to be a good fit for our team, I'm going to connect with them. And even if I absolutely have no space for them, I can't afford to bring them on the team, I'm still going to stay in touch with them. And I'm going to let them know, hey, you know what? If you keep your career options open and you're interested in working for us, I'd love to keep you in mind when we do have a position open so that they know, hey, I'm keeping you in mind. This is something that you want to, constantly be thinking about. An example of this is we actually had one of our clients who she became, a client through originally, actually, it was through our Drop 2 Sizes challenge. She actually worked at the clothing store who we did the co-promotion with. And I offered to let her do the challenge for free. She did the challenge for free. She became a client of our gym. Over time, I watched her interaction with our other clients and, she really was starting to get comfortable, being at the gym and learning a lot of, what we did and really loved being at our gym. And so there were times when classes would get busy and she would jump in and help, coach maybe some of the newer clients, as a client. And so I went up to her and just said, hey, have you ever thought about becoming a trainer? And she thought, oh my gosh, not me, never. I never would think about that. But this was me with my radar up going, hey, she would actually be a good coach, with a little training and get her certified. And, we could definitely, she has a great attitude and she's already, naturally connecting with our clients. And so, the seed was planted and slowly over time, she started to think about it and the seed kept growing. And she was like, so where would I get certified at? And so then she ended up going and getting a certification. And then from there, she started to really just dive into what we do at Results Fitness and started to learn everything she could and became one of our most favorite coaches because of that. So if I hadn't had my radar up, when I saw her interacting with our clients and said that to her, I probably would have never, said that. She probably never would have become a trainer because I wouldn't have ever planted that seed. But it's just something to constantly be thinking about. You never know when you're going to see or meet your next team member. So always, always, always be looking for awesome people to add to your team. That's one of your number one jobs. And what this does is this keeps you from ever hiring out of desperation, which is the worst thing you can do, is hire out of desperation. Once you get to that point where, you're like, I just need a warm body to be here at 5 a.m. to coach people so that I don't have to be, then you're going to end up hiring someone who's not going to be right. And the problem with hiring, a bad hire, if you hire someone who's just not right for your company, it's just a waste of your time, a waste of your energy, and obviously a waste of, money too, because now you've, spent the time, energy, and money to get this person up and running and started. And if they're not going to work out long term, it's just the worst thing you can do for your company. So, hiring is one of the most important jobs as a fitness business owner. Take it seriously and do it, like I said, just constantly be looking for great people. And if you start to have that radar up, you'll start to see people who, wherever you're at, who you start to think, that person would be great on my team. And even though I don't have a position, I'm still going to open up that dialogue because who knows what this could turn into. So go out and build your awesome team and look for those great people. There are great people out there, and I hope this really keeps all of you from ever having that 911 situation where someone unexpectedly leaves or quits, and you're not prepared with other great people to fill that spot. So just keep that in mind as you are building your fitness business. Again, this is Rachel Cosgrove with the Business of Fitness segment. Thanks so much for tuning in and listening this week. I hope you enjoyed it. We do have an event coming up on October 13th, 14th, and 15th. Check out resultsfitnesslaunchpad.com for more information on that. It will sell out, so definitely head over there and check it out.
Hi, everyone. Alistair McCaw here again, and great to be back with you here on the Strength Coach podcast. So already over the last 4 episodes, we've been able to cover chapters 1 to 4 of my new book, The 7 Keys to Being a Great Coach. And just in case you might have missed them or need a little reminder, here's a quick summary. In chapter 1, we spoke about the importance of setting your standards. In chapter 2, we spoke about building your method or philosophy. In chapter 3, we looked at the importance of adapting as a coach. And in chapter 4, the last one we covered, we spoke about the importance of having a great energy as a coach. So in today's episode, we're going to look at chapter 5, and that's all about your interpersonal skills. You see, you can be the smartest coach in the world. In fact, you can be the Einstein of the strength and conditioning industry. But the fact is this: if you can't relate, connect, and get along with people, you're not going to be successful as a coach. Simon Sinek, who's famous for his book Start With Why, said it best: if you don't understand people, you don't understand business. And for us coaches, that can be easily translated into, if you don't understand people, you don't understand coaching. One thing that is important to understand is that we don't coach a sport or physical activity, we coach people. In other words, we need to communicate and interact. And even though the sport or activity might not change, the people do. You might remember in chapter 3, we spoke about the importance of adapting as a coach. And in that chapter, we touched on the fact that you need to adapt to the generation or group you're working with. You need to be able to tap into how they think, how they communicate, and how they best learn, and of course, how they're best motivated. I believe that the most important thing in coaching is to be respected. However, being liked is important too. Athletes and clients will work hard for those they like and respect. And just like we spoke about in chapter 4, we're attracted to the people with a good energy and who are friendly. Let me tell you something that happened to me just a little while back. When I used to live in Tampa, I used to do my own workouts at a large, well-known gym, and I'm going to withhold the name of that. There were around about 15 personal trainers that worked there. While doing my own workout, I'd often observe the other trainers and see how they interacted with others. For example, were they friendly? Did they look engaged? And did they have a good energy about them? Here's the problem. Having observed these trainers over a period of, say, 6 months, probably 10 of these trainers hardly spoke or engaged with anyone except their own clients. And to be pretty honest with you, most of them looked pretty uninterested at times. However, there were 2 trainers in this particular gym, one guy and one girl, who would always smile and just simply say hello. That's all, just a simple smile and hello. And they were always consistent in this. So my question is this. Which trainers do you think I recommended when people asked me if I knew any good personal trainers in the gym? Yep, they're two friendly ones. Now, here's the thing. They definitely didn't have the best exercises or drills of all the trainers, but that didn't matter. They simply looked professional and were friendly. And in the end, I was able to pass on a few new clients to each trainer without even actually knowing them on a personal level. Coaches, here's something important to understand. When people like and respect you, they'll listen to you. Now, they might disagree with you from time to time on what you're saying, but they will respect you. On closing, remember to smile and say hello to members. Just by doing these two things, you're already opening the doors to so many opportunities and relationships. Remember, it's not how smart, qualified, or experienced you are. Of course, these do count, but not as much as being friendly and approachable. Believe me when I say that your interpersonal skills are the key to you getting ahead in this business. Coaches, that's all from me for today. To connect with me, get over to my Twitter at Alistair McCall or Facebook, McCall Method. Thanks so much for joining in, and I look forward to bringing you the next chapter, and that will be Chapter 6, The Fundamentals in Coaching. Until then, I'm Alistair McCall wishing you greatness today.
All right, now it's time for the Hit the Gym with the Strength Coach, and today I have on Todd Wright, and Todd is the assistant coach as well as the head of strength and conditioning for the Philadelphia 76ers. Before that, he had spent 14 or 15 years with the Texas Longhorns men's basketball program. Before that, it was Clemson for about 3 or 4 years. And he also lectures on the Perform Better Summit as well as other lecturing in other venues like NSCA. And I was fortunate enough to spend some time with Todd at his facility in Austin, trained for the game for his mentorship program. So I got to see a lot of things firsthand, what he's doing as from programming, from coaching, as well as a business perspective. So, Todd, thank you so much for coming on today. It's been a long time coming.
Yeah, thanks, man. I'm glad that we finally found time to hook up and do this. I'm excited about our time here.
All right. Well, you just finished your first season with the 76ers, and I would think this is a unique role. You're the assistant coach as well as the head of strength and conditioning. So talk to us about that role, because that seems like a lot. Talk to us about the transition from college to pros and how you're managing those roles.
Sure. Well, when I got into coaching, I was lucky at a young age. My first coach, he would always talk about not putting yourself in a box, and just trying to acquire as many skills as you could to help the entire organization. And so at a young age, at 23, I was learning a valuable lesson that if I could, learn the game of basketball a little bit and some of my skill sets could translate over into, a hybrid model, that to do so. But at a young age, I was watching, my mentor, Rick Barnes, and he just told me, anything that you can do to help the program. So there's so many layers that go into helping an athlete be better. And at the college level, academics was a big part. So I dove into academics quite a bit at Texas, and on top of the development, and then tried to learn the game of basketball best I could. And like anything else, if you're around it long enough, after 21 years in college basketball, you learn the game a little bit from all the coaches that have been with you. And then, about a year ago, I wanted to be able to see if those skills would translate to the professional level. And I was fortunate enough to get the opportunity with the Philadelphia 76ers, and during that process, was able to just talk about the skill sets that I acquired over the 21 years, and they felt like that the title to whatever assistant coach and director of strength and conditioning would probably define the scope of work a little bit better than what I would do at this level. So I'm excited to be here, and obviously I don't have academics involved anymore, but it's still the same game. Well, it's the same fundamentals to the game. The game's much faster. The athletes are, exceptionally gifted. I feel very lucky to be able to work with them, but the fundamentals of the behaviors that you're trying to teach young men on how to become very successful at what they do. And it goes much deeper than just teaching them the art of moving and the art of taking care of their body. There's a lot of behaviors that go into being successful. And so I feel lucky to be with a great young group of players that have, only really spent 1 or 2 years in college and have come out. And so the job actually hasn't been that different from Texas, because I'm still in the development model of physically helping them, but also helping them navigate the emotional component and a whole lot of other things that go into trying to be good at something.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny because I was telling you before, I was watching a video probably from like 2 years ago, and you were on a field at Texas, and I felt like, truly you were a basketball coach, watching that, and I said, like, you're somebody looking at that session might be like, wow, didn't seem like a lot of weights involved. And you were doing some drills where there was like a lot of competitive drills. There were basketballs out there. You were like, lots of energy, very motivating. So I thought it was interesting, like kind of being able to watch that as well, and knowing you, like to kind of see how you were coaching with these players. Not only just, all right, drive the feet into the ground, let's get a flat back. Like you said before, just teaching movement. There's so much more that goes into it. And you were talking about kind of bonding these guys together as a team, and talking about the end of the workout. And not only, and it was cool because it wasn't just this negative, come on, you guys, get in there, let's go. Like, it was more about, look, you had a great first part. The middle was awesome. Let's finish strong. And I thought that was really interesting too, the way you were speaking to them. And so that's why I thought it was. It's funny because I saw it after I had written all my notes, and I was like, wow, I got to add this stuff. But how is that? And again, like you said, I mean, I guess the Sixers are in kind of a transition where they have a little bit some more young players, and like you said, a lot of these guys only play college for 1 or 2 years, and then they're in the pros, so it's not much different. But talk to us about like how much are you working as an assistant coach, and how much are you working with? Are you just doing programming for the strength and conditioning? Do you have an assistant? How's that working out?
Yeah, sure. So, I got into coaching, Anthony, to, number one, I appreciate your words. Thank you. I appreciate your nice words. The part of coaching that I love is I love helping build teams. I love helping in good teams, like how to win. I want to be a piece of the machine that knows how to win at a high level. And I've always wanted that. And so I love game day. We do all this work to compete. And so I love game day, and that's why I get into the mental component in challenging guys, that I want to create environments that help us come together as teams. And so that's been an interesting component for me. In college, you could do it at a much higher level. And at this level, it's interesting because there's a large business aspect to it, and each person is basically its own company in some way, shape, or form. And the ability to take those companies and pull them together to a particular vision. I thought the head coach here and the owners and management had a great vision to make a great team that would be sustainable for a long time. So I was excited to be a part of that. In regards to the programming and all the design, I do collaborate with my assistant, Tador Pandoff, who Tador is a great coach in the field of strength and conditioning, and he was at the University of Miami, the University of Missouri, and the University of Tulsa. He also comes out of the applied functional science background. And so we were able to communicate on a high level. He's done exceptionally well here. He played college basketball, and he's 6'8", and he's just amazing with the guys. He has great connect. He's a great connector. and he really helps me balance a lot. We collaborate on the individual program design, and then we communicate on a very high level with the assistant coaching staff to find a way to blend a lot of our training into very sport-specific movements that the guys need while they're on the floor.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting situation. I think just looking at and knowing you, I think it was the same at Texas with you, and your personality is that you're one of those guys who likes to surround yourself with the best and it's okay. Like you always said, I'm always going to surround myself with smarter people. Like you had Logan Schwartz with you. You guys were such a great team. I'm sure that this partnership is headed in that same direction.
Yeah, Logan was just an amazing teammate of mine for, I don't know, it must have been 8 or 9 years, and he was a brilliant mind in coaching, and much smarter than I'm ever going to be. But our strengths together as a unit really allowed us to create a space at Texas that was very unique, and I thought our players really enjoyed coming in. Tador brings me another flavor that is amazing. He's an amazing connector to people. He has a great energy, super positive. He's a great young mind. And then we're always looking for interns across the country to come in that have, skill sets that'll help challenge us to be even better, So I think that's a key part, though, is that you're willing to put people around you that you might not necessarily be good in something, but they deliver some kind of value to help your particular department or space just get stronger by adding, other attributes that help us get better as a unit.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I hope Tador moves like Logan because you're getting pretty old there. So I think. Logan is an amazing mover. Tador moves exceptionally well for a basketball player, so he can get on the floor with the guys and work with the big guys. He's 36, and so he's still young enough. He's got enough in his legs that he can get out there. I can grab a bag once or twice a week and still get out there, but I'm not a day-to-day physical. Yeah, these bodies are getting bigger and stronger, and I'm getting older and lower to the ground. So it's good, though. Once again, as you get older and you're moving through the journey, you got to keep putting people around you that can complement some of those skills that you really need in your environment to keep it at a high level. Absolutely. My first experience with you probably 6-7 years ago at the Perform Better Summits, and then that led me to your mentorship. The first one that you did, I actually went with Charlie Weingroff. It was a huge aha moment for me down there. It shaped my program. A lot of people listening know that already. The vertical core and the locomotion for me, fit right into a piece of what I was doing that changed. Was a game changer for me. So I kind of want to go in that direction right now. Let's go in the movement direction. Let's set it up. Let's talk about, in your lectures, you talk about the truth of human movement. Can you give us an overview of that?
Sure. Well, when I met Gary Gray probably 17 or 18 years ago, I started going to his chain reaction seminars. And I was overwhelmed by the information that was coming out, but there was some consistent things that I really couldn't deny. And that the fact was that the truth to human movement is the body works as an integrated unit. We work and function in an upright position. We use the ground to produce energy, to move our body. So our feet have to push through the grounds. We're all overcoming gravity. Gravity is a constant force on us. And then the mass and momentum of our bodies as it moves in three-dimensional space, it creates another loading mechanism for the kinetic chain. So those are simple truths to the human body when you start to look at it. The other major part to the human body is that we are a three-dimensional vehicle. We move three-dimensionally. However, when I was learning a lot of the basic training protocols, they didn't really have a lot of three-dimensionality to them, nor did they sometimes create a global environment, global meaning upright with my feet on the ground. A lot of them were localized. So maybe in positions that didn't efficiently use how ground reaction would work and how we would overcome gravity. So as I started to look at the truths to human movement, I had a couple athletes that totally changed my path and how I thought. And both of them were, well, the two major ones were back injuries. Back injuries that I found a dysfunction in the foot. One had a locked subtalar joint, which is the heel bone in the back, and the talus was locked in inversion. So basically, as Gary started to teach me, when the foot hit the ground, there was a chain reaction that happened through the entire body. And the heel would go through a small motion called eversion. And as it started to evert, the talus would fall down and in. As the talus falls down and in, the mid-tarsal joint collapses. The arch collapses. And as the mass and momentum of my body pass over my center of gravity, my tibia internally rotates, my femur internally rotates, and then I go through a process where the big toe would come into flexion as it almost propels off the back foot in gait. So I started to understand how important the foot was in the interaction with the ground. You brought up the term vertical core. And so my first speaking opportunity on the Perform Better circuit was maybe 10 or 12 years ago. Chris asked me to fill in for someone that couldn't speak. And at the time, everybody was talking about core. It was like, it was the word, and everybody wanted to figure it out. Well, I had just been going through this process with these athletes that they were having core dysfunction. They were having low back dysfunction, but really they were having low back dysfunction because of a dysfunction in their foot. And I was like, well, this is probably going to tip some stuff upside down when I try to talk about this. So I tried to take the functional anatomy of the core, and I tried to teach in the explanation to it was logically all the functional anatomy hooks in to the pelvis. Every single internal, external, oblique, rectus abdominis, transverse abdominis, they all hook in on the pelvis. And then they all come up and hook into the rib cage. So as I started to learn about what the core really was, all those muscles hook in the rib cage, and the rib cage wraps around and attaches into the thoracic spine. So as the thoracic spine loads through flexion and extension, lateral flexion, basically you stretch your core from the top down. So if both my arms reached up above my head, my thoracic spine would extend and it would lift my rib cage. It would help me store energy in my core. Well, the rib cage is a three-dimensional vehicle. They can load in the sagittal plane, frontal plane, and transverse plane. But yet I was only trained in one plane of motion. And the majority of it was on the floor. My feet weren't even on the ground. So here I was bridging these kids and trying to stabilize their core when really the dysfunction was coming from the foot. So every piece of work that I did with them, as soon as they got up and started to walk, their low back pain came back. Well, then when you look at the pelvis is a three-dimensional vehicle. As my legs move, so if I step forward with my right foot, I would step in the sagittal plane forward. My pelvis creates a load from the ground up. So basically we coined this vertical core training, which is basically a theoretical model of how movement gets converted through the core from the top down and from the bottom up when my feet hit the ground. So we did systemize it. It was a theoretical model, but we systemized it on how to teach it. And so we broke it down into progressions where feet would be stationary and we would use our arms to drive with small loads in all three planes of motion through the rib cage lifting. And then we had a second progression where the feet would move on particular vectors, the sagittal plane vector, the frontal plane vector, and the transverse plane vector. And we would feed the pelvis and the core from the ground up. And then our third progressions was the combination of the feet moving on the vector and the arms moving in space. So basically, it was a theoretical and a conceptual model of how movement would be converted through the core. But I felt like if we named it vertical core, people would come. And I was lucky that they did. I don't know if, it's been 6 years, I think, since I've presented on the vertical core, but it's basically, it's a logical model. Like, it makes sense why you would train the core that way. If you look at how the functional anatomy fits into the pelvis and the rib cage. And we've been fortunate enough to be able to create some results through the system.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the key there is what you just said. It's logical. It makes sense. And that's really what hit me, because I was on the floor and I felt, we did a lot of the bridging, planks, quadruped, tall kneel, half kneeling, tall kneeling. But then there wasn't this element. And a lot of times it went out really to just this kind of sagittal plane locomotion for the most part, and maybe a little bit of frontal plane, and we'll get into that in a minute. But, like what you said, first you're starting out with your feet stationary in these different positions, just using those arm drivers, and then you're doing the different lunges in the different vectors. And then you're using the arm drivers with the lunging. And to me, it just made sense. I wonder, though, and I always said to people, it's very easy to explain that, listen, we're just following the path of childhood development. For me, in my program, we're on our backs, then we're on our stomachs, then we're in, crawling position, and then we stand up. What does a baby do? They stand up and they sit on that coffee table, right? And they don't move. So we're learning to move from there. And then what do? We take our first step. So we're taking our first step in all three planes of motion. Then next would be the locomotion, and that would be taking our second and third and fourth step. So to me, it made sense. I just wonder, because I love the lunge matrix with the arm drivers, because the arms are at times in the sagittal plane while the legs, the lower body's going in frontal or transverse plane. The arms might be going in frontal plane while the legs are and the lower body is going in sagittal or transverse plane. So we're getting every kind of movement that can possibly happen with the arms and the legs in different planes of motions, how we move in life. I just wonder, if you weren't in the basketball world, would that have made as much sense for you? Or maybe the injuries weren't happening. But, because I feel like they're perfect for basketball.
Yeah, and so you hit a couple key words in what you just said. You used the word move. And so, like, in basketball, my best players that I've ever coached, they're amazing at controlling their space. They're not necessarily the strongest in the weight room, but they are great movers. And so they find ways to negotiate their space, whether they use the speed of their body to get into another body, or they slow down and speed up. They have a great way of, the great ones, they dominate their space. They use their body and the speed of their body and the coordination to take control over their opponent. And so my number one goal is to help my athletes become amazing movers. I want them to be amazing at moving. I think a myth of where a lot of people think that we don't lift weights. We actually do lift weights. We do some traditional training where we do move weight. But the majority of our focus is how to control our bodies in three planes of motion. And so we have 10 core movements that we focus on: a squat, a single leg squat, a lunge, a leap, a pivot, a jump, a hop, a jop, a reach, and a swing. And then we three-dimensionalize those movements, and then we'll load those movements, whether it's with a Viper, a Sandbell, a Kaiser. Now, as they master those three-dimensional movements, though, we do train. We Olympic lift, we squat, we deadlift. Some of my older guys do not. The veteran guys love the three-dimensional movement stuff, because when you explain the human body to them. So you were talking about the locomotion component and how we, come up from the ground. But if you look at two basic laws of the human body, Davis's law and Wolff's law, of how soft tissue remodels and how bone models, and those two laws basically say that soft tissue and bone develop on the lines of mechanical stress into it. So basically those two laws are telling us that our body wants as much variability of load to create a robust structure. It's logical, right? Like if I continually train in one particular motion under load, I'm only going to lay down lines of support in my fascial system in that plane. Same with my bone. So if I understand the directions of the game and the speeds of the game, if I don't program those into the program, I'm not giving my athletes a chance to really stay healthy for a long time. That goes back to the logical and some of the fundamental truths to human movement, right? Those laws have been around forever, Davis's and Wolff's law. I want to put as much variability, vector variability into the athlete that I'm training. And that creates a robust bone structure and creates a robust fascial system, but also coordinates a lot of nervous system development and motor control, right? How can I control my body in those three planes of motion?
Absolutely. And, it doesn't, we're gonna go deeper, a little bit deeper. It doesn't just apply to that vertical core right there, but now we're doing some running, we're getting some locomotion. And like I said before, a traditional kind of, athletic warm-up, there'd be, mostly sagittal, little bit of frontal with some different stretches. But you guys, your system included a lot of transverse locomotion where you were kind of, where you're, running in a circle and forward and backward and skipping and doing some karaoke and some different hops. And I think one of the best ways to really teach people that for me was, and this is, I think, why you've come back to teaching about the foot, is because there's 26 bones in each foot, 52 in the feet, right? 206 or 7 or 8 in the body. So 25% of the bones, that's how you always explained it, 25% of the bones are in the feet. They got to be pretty important. These two little guys down there. And I think when you start to show people, like I always taught people the locomotion with and the vertical core without their shoes on first, especially. I always try to get them to do that anyway, but especially in the beginning, because I think they get a better sense of how much their foot is moving when they're doing all this transverse, sagittal, frontal, and transverse locomotion. Can you just go over for people the philosophy behind some of the transverse moves and why you want to do that as well?
Yeah, sure. So basically the locomotion system, the 3D locomotor system that we developed as a group down in Austin, Texas, locomotion means the ability to go from A to B, whether that distance is 5 yards, 10 yards, 15 yards, 50 yards. But I can do it in a particular pattern. I can walk from A to B. I can skip from A to B. I can shuffle from A to B. Shuffle would simply mean that my feet wouldn't cross. So I'm going to go into the three-dimensionality of it here in just a minute, but I could karaoke in 3 planes of motion. So basically the core motor patterns are walk, skip, shuffle, karaoke, and then run. There's 5 core patterns. And then I can move forwards and backwards. So if A to B was straight ahead and straight back, that would be anterior, posterior. So I would locomote on a sagittal plane vector. So I could walk forwards, I could walk backwards, or I could skip forwards and skip backwards. I could shuffle forwards. So a shuffle forward would mean my left leg would be back, my right leg would be forward. I would push out of my left leg and throw my right leg forward. Push and throw, push and throw, push and throw. So my feet would never cross. And then I could go posterior shuffle where my right foot would dig into the ground and I would throw my left leg back. So I would move backwards. Same thing, we would karaoke forwards and then we could run forwards. Now I could also take that in the frontal plane. So I could go right lateral and left lateral with those exact movement patterns. I could walk. I could crossover walk. I could crossover skip to the right. I could crossover skip to the left. I could cross behind skip to the right, cross behind skip to the left. I could karaoke right. I could karaoke left. And then the last plane of motion would be the transverse plane of motion, which we would make a circular pattern on the ground. And because your foot and pelvis are continually rotating in one direction, you're feeding your body the transverse plane. So I could skip in a circle going right. I could backwards skip in a circle going left. And then I could change the position with my left leg's on the inside. I could transverse plane skip backwards. But I think the locomotor system is the biggest bang for your buck. I think if you really want to keep somebody healthy, basically you're moving continuously on a vector. So if I just step forward with my right leg, basically I'm right leg lunging. But if I right leg lunge continuously for 15 yards at a particular speed, it goes back to the logical rules of Wolf and Davis's law, right? I want to be able to coordinate as many patterns in my body to create a robust system. So basically every different angle that I'm moving at from A to B, I'm taking so much vector variability and I'm throwing it into my pelvis, I'm throwing it into my feet. You could start to do stuff with arms overhead where you're starting to feed into your thoracic spine and your cervical spine. That's the great part to applied functional science, and what Gary Gray teaches is that once you get the logical principles on it, you can build a never-ending toolbox to it. So we developed the vertical core. We developed the 3D locomotor system. And then I know where you're going to go next. You're going to go, where you bringing me next, Anthony? There's one more part to the system.
You mean on the floor, you mean?
There you go.
Yeah. Well, because I wanted to talk to you about that, because it was one of the things really for me that I was already doing, and I felt like this fit in, for me personally, right after that piece, it was great vertical core, split stance matrix matrix arm drivers into locomotion. It was a really great ramp up into getting into with some of the other weight lift, the traditional lifts, quote unquote. So because the locomotive, they're going to finishing. It's not just a warm up, but it's an extended warm up almost, and they're finishing with heart rate's elevated. But when I was down at Train for the Game, we didn't really spend a lot of time on the floor, right. And because you didn't spend much time on the floor, but eventually you had to go there. Tell us why and how that works.
Sure. So I was, and this is a great story for young coaches because, once you think that you have your system set, you're going to have someone that's going to throw you a curveball and take you into another. You always want to try to find solutions to fix things. So I felt like our systems were in a place that was built off logic that I could explain to people and why they should do them, and they would be motivated to do so because of the logic. And then I took a curveball. I actually got hurt when I was 38 years old. I avulsed my adductor longus off of my pelvis at the end of a workout when I was doing stuff with my team at Texas that I was just trying to run with them, and do things that my 38-year-old body wasn't going to continually be able to keep up with the volume of what they did. But anyway, I avulsed my adductor longus. And then maybe 2 years later, I was listening to Thomas Myers in Chicago talk about tensegrity and the concept of the tensegrity model, how if something, down the kinetic chain has adhesed or is hurt or is pulled, there's an adhesion. that it could create abnormal forces up the rest of the chain, right? And so the tensegrity basically is it's a three-dimensional model of how our bones are balanced in this fascial tension system between our ligaments, tendons, muscle, and fascia. And our bones should float in neutral positions, but if you have a tight muscle or if you've had an injury, basically that adhesion will pull on the rest of the chain. So as I was watching the Thomas Myers talk, I started to think to myself, well, if this is really true, I'm probably going to be screwed here really shortly. And sure enough, about 18 months after that, I started to have a neck issue, which I had never had a real neck issue, except if you've met me before, it's like part of my head. It's a very large, my neck is enormous. It looks like it. And so you would think that it's not, that it probably should hurt, but it didn't until this point. And then my wife, I was having trouble sleeping and because of the neck pain, and I was getting MRIs and CAT scans and nothing was coming up. Fascially, the MRIs weren't picking up anything. My wife asked me to go to some yoga classes with her, and I started to get into some inversion poses where my head was upside down and it started to traction my system, but I could actually feel in my pelvis where I had avulsed the adductor longus how it was lengthening. So I was lengthening the entire chain as I got into what they would call up dog. Up dog? Yeah, right. Or down dog. Down dog. Well, my butt's up in the air.
I think that's down, yeah.
Okay, down dog. Thank you.
It's all Greek to me, though.
Yeah, there you go. Right. And so, but what I started to realize was as my feet and my hands were into the ground, it was creating a whole different core load through my spine. And I was able to train my shoulders and thoracic spine and my cervical spine because my hands were fixed on the ground. So I started to think to myself, based off the rules of, once again, Wolff's Law and Davis's Law, that there are no absolutes. So I was thinking I was going to do everything globally. And so I started to realize that my unique issues in my body, I was responding better in this on-ground position. So then we developed the 3D dog, what we would call 3D dog. DOG is an acronym for developmental on-ground function. And basically, it's all three-dimensionalized again. So I was loving the yoga, but it wasn't really three-dimensionalized. So I knew I could use my arms as a driver. So if I was in the push-up position, I could oscillate my hand front to back, my right hand front to back. And as that arm moved front to back, it would create a reaction through my left shoulder and my pelvis. And so I could use my right hand front to back in the sagittal plane, side to side in the frontal plane, and then I could rotate my hand on the ground and create another load as my right hand moved. So we created this developmental on-ground system where I could have an arm driver, a hip driver, and a leg driver. And basically, as I started to dive back into, like you had stated early, as a child, we come out and we lay on our bellies and our head gets upright and we start to look up and it starts to strengthen our back. And then we get to our hands and we get into a crawling position. Well, I realized that if we could take the same principles that we would develop the vertical core and the locomotor system, we could probably come up with a on-ground function system that could get to specific things. Like if my thoracic spine was really tight, I could use the on-ground system to get into it a little bit easier. If I had shoulder issues or shoulder mobility, I could do different things on the on-ground to actually open my shoulders and cervical up much better. And that's where the other part to the system, the 3D dog, came in.
Nice. And how was that kind of, you have a gym. We mentioned your gym, Train for the Game. You still have the gym. You're in Philadelphia, but the gym is in Austin, still being run by your great staff. How was that process of not only for your staff but for your longtime clients of trying to get them sold on this ground piece?
Yeah, well, I am lucky. I have some amazing people in Austin, Texas. Chris Braden, my business partner, Jessica Viana, David Martin, Cassie Butzik, Josh Ryan. They're the core group to my team that is just they're amazing. They're amazing people. And I talk with them quite a bit. I Skype with them, and when I had the opportunity to come here, we've always created environments on learning and growing. And so when I had the opportunity to potentially go with Philadelphia, they knew it would be a great learning experience and growing. And so they were really supportive to doing that. In regards to entering the on-ground function stuff, it was good. We had some great influences. Lenny Parasino out of California, who's just an amazing talent, had some unique perspectives on some of the on-ground that made us think different. When we implemented it into the business, our people loved it. They instantly loved it. So we started to do a 3D core session, which was basically start on ground, do all the leg drivers, all the hip drivers, all the arm drivers in the supine position, and then do everything in the prone position, side lying position, all the drivers, and then go from kneeling to upright into the vertical core, from the vertical core into the locomotor system. And some of those classes were some of our biggest attended classes that we had designed. And then the on-ground development stuff has actually gone over great here at the professional level. The guys, I think, have been really responsive to it. We're doing a better job teaching the guys when they enter, and our clients that train for the game, what human movement really is. And I think that's a key component in delivering an introductory course to the athlete and the consumer when they come into the business of the fundamental truths of the human body, because instantly they're motivated to be able to understand how to control their bodies three-dimensionally.
Great stuff. And you guys have always done a great job with the education, and I think you've already laid that foundation, that groundwork with people truly understanding what 3D is. So I didn't really feel like it would be too much of a change. They can at least, they already had the concept down, and then okay, now we're going on the ground. So good stuff. Todd, let's finish off with, one of the things that I was saying earlier about you is just, your coaching ability. That really doesn't get talked about a lot. Probably just, you have your lectures on the foot and your lectures on, vertical core and locomotion, et cetera. But the impact that you've had on, Kevin Durant called you a father figure, and he said he couldn't describe the impact that you've had on him. And that's coming from a lot of different players that have gone through the Longhorn system as well. Can you just talk to us about that, about the art of coaching, and really connecting with those players, and what are some things that you would impart on your coaches? Because then I could tell everybody right now that and I said this to you in Portland as well, is that this stuff starts from the top, and that's why, like, when I went to train for the game, you could tell the passion that they had, and how much they cared, and when I remember walking in and being just so surprised at people saying, "Hey, what's up, Anthony?" Like, they knew who I was without even, and I had no idea who they were. And like I said, I mean, that's just like what you've done, not only as a coach for your college players, but also in your business. Can you just talk to us a little bit about that and some things that you try to do and some wisdom you try to impart on your coaches?
Sure. Well, the one part of the core foundation of coaching is that the relationships that you develop with the people that you work with. The definition of a coach is is taking a person of value from where they are to where they want to be. And there's a large scope of skills that go into helping that person. We're lucky that as performance coaches, strength coaches, we get to do it through physical transformation. But that's only one part to it. You know, sport is all about adversity and how you handle adversity and the support systems that you have around you when things aren't going great, you know. And so that's a part that I've always genuinely loved, is that, you know, you want to create environments that challenge your athletes to be better. But when they fall, that you're there for them to pick them up and help them, you know. Kevin Durant was a very special relationship in my life, and I'm lucky that I have a lot of them. I mean, I could go for every, you know, the Kevin Durant. I'm just lucky that Kevin's one that gets to talk about it in the public. But like the ability to help young men understand what it takes to be good at something, and be a good person while you're doing it. When you blend those two worlds together, you can be exceptionally talented. But the guys that have good emotional intelligence, that are smart, that know how to communicate with people, that are humble, there's something that if you're really talented and you have those other components, that energy is always drawn to you and you have a chance to be highly successful. I've always been fascinated with how to help engineer a better athlete and a better person. And so I'm always intrigued with reading, you know, books of, you know, like the last one that I just read was Grit, The Ideal Team Player. I'm fascinated with learning the psychology and the mental component, because really and truly the only thing that separates talent is resiliency. You know, the guys that have positive outlooks, that won't get held down, they can wipe themselves off, get back upright, and go right back at it. But those skills can be taught, and they can be encouraged, you know, and they can be cultivated when a guy falls, and to help him understand that he has the strength to do this. And the only thing that separates, you know, the great ones are their mindset. That's something that I've always loved to try to help deliver, to help people understand that they can be better. And truth be known, we all need that person, every single one of us. Mm-hmm. We need someone to help us believe that we can be better. And then when we do good things, that you have someone there to encourage you. And then when your behavior's not so good, you got someone to keep you in check. You know, I think that's the art. We could go into a weight room all day long and just, you know, teach people how to move and how to train. And I just feel like I always remember my first coach, like, don't put yourself in a box. Like, just make the person that you're with better in every aspect that you can possibly do. And that's something that I've always genuinely, it comes easy for me. It's very authentic. And because of that, I think I've been able to establish some great friendships as I've moved on. And Kevin's an amazing person, and he's an amazing talent. And he has an amazing work ethic. And the three combination of those things has propelled him into who he is.
Absolutely. And, you know, like I said, I've had a lot of exposure, not only to your lectures, but being down in Austin and spending time together in Portland, and definitely glad that I've finally able to get you out there to a few more people, because I've been a huge influence on my coaching. So, Todd, thanks so much for coming on today and giving us a rundown of some of your philosophy on not only movement but on coaching. So we really appreciate it.
You know what? I really appreciate you, Anthony. I've been very blessed that a lot of people have helped me create a lot of these thoughts over 21 years, and so I appreciate the fact that you give me the opportunity to share them, because I just remember as a young coach, I just wanted to get out and just learn from everybody, and so I just want to thank you for that. I could share some of the stories and hopefully reach out to some of the young coaches coming through the ranks. Hopefully something can help somebody.
All right, that's going to do for episode 193 of the Strength Coach Podcast. Special thanks to Chris Pryor, Aaron McGurr, and the folks over at Perform Better. You can check them out at performbetter.com for all their products and info on their educational seminars. Don't forget, the huge summer sale ends very soon. Thanks to Coach Boyle and Coach Todd Wright for sharing their insights and philosophies into the world of strength and conditioning and performance enhancement. Rachel Cosgrove for the Results Fitness University Business of Fitness segment. Check them out at resultsfitnessuniversity.com. Alistair McCaw from the McCaw Method. Check them out at mccawmethod.com. And of course, you can join strengthcoach.com and have access to the site for just $1 trial for 3 days. Full access to the site. Once your 3-day trial is over, then you'll be able to download Coach Boyle's 2 books, Designing Strength Training Programs and Facilities, as well as Advances in Functional Training. Remember, if you have a staff of 2 or more and you want to sign up as a group, we have a special membership offer for you, up to 50% off, depending on how many people you got. To access the offer, go to strengthcoach.com, click the Join Now button to get started on your trial. My name's Anthony Rana. You can reach me at strengthcoachpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks again, and I'll speak to you next time.